Iran has put the world on notice. In an odd way, an almost implicit falling backwards into this, that Vladimir Putin, you could say Vladimir Putin doesn't fall backwards into anything, but in this case, to some degree he did, intervenes on this issue concerning Iran, especially from the standpoint of the United States and its aggression towards Iran. I explain what I mean. Welcome to the Soapbox. My name is Jamarl Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. There's an interesting story that came up regarding Vladimir Putin and issues of Iran. Now, this kind of led me to wanting to talk about kind of a larger thing of what's taking place with Iran, the politics surrounding this, and even the activities of Putin in this arena. There's a lot, which is why I put the title as what I put a title as. So first, in an odd way, a story comes up in Bloomberg saying that Vladimir Putin declined selling S-400 missile systems to Iran. Now, Russia comes out and says this is not true. Now, Bloomberg is standing by this story, but what it basically boils down to is Iran wanted S-400 systems. These are the missile systems that are supposedly extraordinarily good that many other countries like Turkey, and if I'm not mistaken, even India, has requested. They're cheaper than American Patriot missiles and just as good, if not better, in regards to what they allow. And so many of the countries around the world have wanted these systems. That said, it is tricky to give those systems to Iran. Iran is in a regional conflict with Saudi Arabia and Israel, and so Russia has its own political entanglements with these countries, meaning trying to keep good associations with these other countries. And selling the missiles to Iran, seeing that these countries are enemies, could put them in an awkward political position. There's also this thing that the United States has been upping the aggression towards Iran, sending thousands of men and supplies into that region of the world. And Saudi Arabia and Israel, allies of the United States, interestingly enough, Saudi Arabia has one of the highest, most expensive militaries in the world, and yet can't take down a podunk country of Yemen. And Israel, of course, is an apartheid state. These are our allies. And these countries, both of which are willing to fight to the last dead American in order to liquidate Iran. Now, we were careening towards war. And the JCPOA, the Iranian agreement, was one of the things that prevented that war. Or prevented that, let's say put a fork in it, to put a pin in it to some degree. It was a triumph, I would argue. The rest of the world considered it as such, and the rest of the world signed on to that agreement. Trump pulls out of it. Iran was living up to its agreements. All of the countries around the world attest to such. Iran was living up to its agreements. The United States was the one that balked and pulled out of this agreement. The United States also continued to pull out of multiple agreements. Not just this one, but also the nuclear agreement with Russia. The Intercontinental Ballistic Treaty with Russia, even putting weapons in space. They pull out of one after the next. This gets across the notion that we are somewhat of an untrustworthy partner in this regard. Trump's plan was to put a maximum pressure on Iran. I know what I was getting at. The fact is, because of everything that's taken place with regards to the politics, it becomes tricky for Russia to do this. But Bloomberg comes out and says Vladimir Putin declined to do this. Russia comes out and says that's not true. They say that's not true. They say, whoa, that's not true. That story that you guys are putting out, that's not true. Bloomberg said they're sticking by it. A part of them saying that's not true, especially from the standpoint of what the United States is doing in this relationship that the U.S. and Russia are trying to come to, some kind of agreement of sorts. Again, this is even tricky from that front. You have a lot of Democrats that blame Russia for Hillary Clinton losing. And so you have these people who are pissed off at Russia in this regard. So all of this becomes somewhat tricky. Trump is putting maximum pressure. You have allies in the region that they want to attend to. So it becomes a little tricky to sell Iran weapons when there's such tension in the region. But Russia has come out saying that story's not true. Now the catch here becomes, why would they do that? What is the politics of this? They could have just let that story says, in the past, they've tried to sell S-400s, in which case Russia has declined to do it. But why do they care about making that such a big deal now? I'll put to you there probably two main reasons. Yes, there are the politics of this, but there's also this notion of Iran being alone. The United States is putting maximum pressure. They're trying to squeeze that country into submission. Iran hasn't budged. Now, the catch for this is the U.S. has been going around the world trying to get assistance on this, and this is where I was going with the JCPOA. Iran has attended to its deals. It's stayed by its agreements. For this entire year, Iran has not budged on their agreements. That's about to change. Trump administration has failed in its effort to try to get any country around the world to work with it, with the exception of Saudi Arabia and Iran and Israel. But from the standpoint of the major nations around the world, they have failed to get anybody to work with them on the issue of Iran because Iran has stuck to its agreements. We are the ones that pulled out of this. That's about to change. In the middle of this maximum pressure strategy, Rouhani has said, we're done. The United States has unilaterally pulled out this deal. And we can't be the only ones that are attending to our agreements, meaning we can't be the only ones that is being limited by this agreement when everybody else has pulled out. The moment that the U.S. pulled out, the other companies in the various places around the world also pulled out because they didn't want to lose access to the U.S. market. So by de facto, U.S. being such a dominant population or a dominant economic center, all of these other countries, all of these other companies essentially pull out of the deal. There are some small companies that have stayed in, and Europe have tried to come up with some backdoor strategy to allow these companies to continue to deal with Iran, but for the most part, the major companies have left. Iran stuck to the deal even after that. And up to this point, Iran has put the world on notice and said, we're done. We are going to start enriching some of the uranium. Now, I don't want to get into the very specifics of the centrifuges and those type of things. Essentially, they've upgraded their centrifuges and they can essentially produce more, I guess you could say, material that goes beyond the bounds of the agreement itself, the JCPOA. But again, up to this point, they're still staying with the agreement. But Rouhani comes out and says this. This is Rouhani essentially saying, we're done. We're pulling out certain aspects of the deal. In fact, I can...
از این اقدام خودداری میکنیم یعنی سطحی دیگه برای ما
we've been adhering to the nuclear deal. And we've been adhering to this nuclear deal for the course of a year, and you guys have not been able to protect us from the United States. Because of that, we are pulling out portions of the deal, not the deal in its entirety, but portions of the deal. It's not that we're trying to create nuclear weapons, but we should be able to pursue nuclear power like anyone else. He's not wrong, by the way. He's not wrong. Now, this was condemned by certain world powers. There were angry fist waving from Western powers. But here's the catch. If Iran had broke any tenets of the deal, nobody would remember that Donald Trump pulled out of the deal. The only thing they would remember is that Iran started breaking certain elements of the deal. This is dramatically unfair from the standpoint of world perspective and what it would allow to take place. Donald Trump pulling out of the deal was somewhat of a bait. The goal was to bait Iran into action. Iran didn't take that bait, and because of that, the rest of the world, for the most part, has remained on the side of Iran. This provocation, however, is because Iran can't sit there forever and attest to a deal that no one else is adhering to. Clearly, that's not fair. Here's the truth of world politics. This has nothing to do with justice. This has everything to do with power. What do I mean by that? To try to take people out of just an American perspective for the moment, meaning this perspective of what is in our best interest is somehow right, or that the things that the United States engages in are doing so because it's somehow right. I would like to disabuse you of that particular perspective. This is about power, not about right and wrong. So, for example, Israel has nuclear weapons. Nobody makes an issue out of that at all. Nobody cares that Israel has nuclear weapons. That allows them to be somewhat of a dominant power in the region. They are our allies, just like Saudi Arabia are our allies. And this kind of trio of sorts allows a certain cowing of their country, meaning their country is always under threat. Nuclear energy would be this ability to not be under attack, meaning the reason that Iran may want a nuclear weapon is for the exact same reason that we don't want them to have a nuclear weapon. They can defend themselves. This is not about Iran attacking other nations. What nations have Iran invaded? We are the ones that invade other nations. Israel is the nation that attacks other nations in the surrounding areas, terrorizing their neighbors. That's not Iran. Whatever you may want to think of the regime, fair enough. But let's also remember how Iran got to be what Iran is, meaning the totalitarian state that it is wasn't always that way. There was a dictator there that we ourselves preferred, but after the revolution, that dictator was taken down, and we have the government that we have. There was a government in Iran that was somewhat of a secular government. That government was collapsed when they started to want to give more of their oil revenue to the people of that country. You can thank Britain and America for that. My point is this. Iran is a sovereign nation. And like any other nation, they would have these wants to pursue certain things. Nuclear power being one of those things. If they want a weapon because they want to defend themselves. Just like North Korea, this notion that you can't really attack them if they have a nuclear weapon because they can essentially hurt you in the process of your own attack. Us not wanting them to get nuclear weapons is purely there to stop them from being able to defend themselves. I hope you understand that. It's not because they're going to attack other nations, it's because they can defend themselves if they get a nuclear weapon. That's a dramatic difference in the perspectives that the Western powers usually make when they're talking about Iran, as if it's some offensive capacity. That's the major point here is this has nothing to do with justice. This has everything to do with power. And the goal is to keep an uneven distribution of power. I've argued before that there is no such thing as international law. If you have a situation where countries can completely ignore something that's written on the books, then that law doesn't really mean anything. If it's a podunk African nation that can't defend itself, then yeah, there's laws on the books that apply. But when you get into Western powers, when you get into the United States, France, Russia, China, any of these countries, laws don't apply. Can't call it a law if there is no way to enforce it. Look, that's somewhat of a byproduct, but my point is this. Iran has put the world on notice. In 60 days, the world is going to have to make a choice on what it's going to do. Is it going to ignore the fact that all of this was precipitated with the United States pulling out of the agreement? One last point also. Donald Trump's strategy will have one or two effects. It would either fail or it would either provoke a war, which is also to some degree a failure. It's going to fail because countries have their politics just like we have our politics here. In the same way you have people attacking other candidates for either being weak, out of touch, etc., you have the same politics that takes place in Iran. Yes, you have an Ayatollah, but you still have politics that takes place where weakness is attacked. If Khomeini, he's already weakened by Trump pulling out of the deal. There were elements, hardliners in Iran that said this deal was doomed to failure, that the United States cannot be trusted, that this deal was a waste of our time, that this deal gives away too much, etc., etc. And they were proven to be right when Donald Trump pulled out of the deal. Rouhani has no political capital to give on this. Meaning, even if he wanted to talk, he wouldn't be allowed to talk because he would be collapsed in a political sense immediately if he tried to. Meaning, the politics of this force his hand. He can't give anything else away in regards to dealing with this deal because Donald Trump pulled out of the agreement. The hardliners are already saying he's weak because he accepted that deal in the first place. He has nowhere to go. Everyone in Iran in this is an ideological alignment on no more compromises. It doesn't matter what happens to Iran at this point, meaning from the standpoint of the people that may be killed by these sanctions and everything else. Politically, it is impossible for them to give any headway on this because the moment that they do, they will be criticized as being weak, their government will collapse, and hardliners will be able to take power. Trump's plan is going to fail because it has to fail. There's no leeway. There's no out. There's nothing that he can give way on this particular point. So, Iran can't budge. There's nowhere to budge to. So the only other out is for war. Meaning something happens. Some intelligence report comes out. Something gets bombed and it gets attributed to Iran. Kind of like those tankers that they're saying, well, the Houthis own it. And they're saying, well, the Houthis are really proxies for Iran, so it's Iran's fault. Something like that takes place. A new Gulf of Tonkin. A new weapons of mass destruction. That would force Donald Trump's hand. Meaning it wouldn't necessarily matter that Donald Trump doesn't want to get embroiled into a conflict. The political winds would force his hand, in which case the U.S. would get further invested in those countries. The deck chairs are arranged. Either this plan fails, meaning nothing takes place on this, Donald Trump loses the next election, the next president comes in, does a new policy. Either this fails, or we end up into a larger conflict. One of those two things. Mark my words, I could be wrong, but I don't see where else this goes. I think that's everything. I just wanted to touch on the issues surrounding this conflict. And yeah, the Vladimir Putin thing is interesting to me because it means that they're not alone. I could be wrong, but I suspect that there is something to be said about the regional conflict that has taken place. But there is a there's a politics within regards to how leaders project themselves in the other countries. And one of the things he doesn't want to project, I would imagine, is that Iran is by itself. Whether they choose to sell the weapons to him or not is almost secondary to give it this notion that Iran is by itself. Russia not wanting to sell the weapon systems to Iran gives this impression that Iran doesn't have the ability to protect itself, or that it doesn't have allies in the region. That, of course, is false. Russia and Iran were working in tandem in helping prop up Syria. Will Putin intervene heavily? Maybe, maybe not. But at the very least, from the politics of it, I would imagine he doesn't want to give this impression that Iran is out there on its own. But yeah, I agree the regional power thing matters too. All of these things are kind of, they meshed in there together in regards to the reasoning and the rationale that he would give this open rebuttal of this Bloomberg article. Let's see. All right, so let's start. I'm sorry, guys, I don't feel that great today. I have, where is, all right, they've been making changes. Damn it, Streamlabs. There we are. All right. Iran, Ayatollah Yusuf. Do it a third time. Do it a third time and make it 45 minutes with no editing it later. Oh man, I don't like doing messed up videos. Torched. The only thing Chief is capable of torching is his career when he shielded for Hillary and pushed Russia bait. That did not help. I agree with you on that one. Do it a third time and make it 45 minutes with no editing. Oh God. Now, I edit videos sometimes, or I do the video over again. The last video I did over again because I hated the video. The video went way too long. And aside going way too long, there was repetition of what I was trying to get across because I couldn't quite get it right. So the second time is better. Now, it's Shane Wolf. Thank you, Shane Wolf. Oh, Shane Wolf, thank you. Leave a comment, Shane. I like comments. All right. Order of chaos. The U.S. does not have free elections. Elephants on Coke. Spiky, you've not met a right-winger or a hillbot. Slow news day. Spiky is doing a hell of a job with this Tom Watson impression. Uh-oh. All right, I'll leave it here. I hope this made sense. I tried to kind of give an overview of everything that was taking place, or much of what was taking place. Look, just to make a very basic point, we have no moral high ground in this. None. The perspective that we often take is that we in the West have somewhat of a moral high ground. We do not. Much of the problems that these guys are having in the Middle East are from the previous wars that even though they were engaged in, they weren't necessarily involved in. Even Iran, its creation itself was somewhat of a European thing. Britain being masters of the universe, breaking up, if I'm not mistaken, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. But my point is this. We have intervened into the affairs of Middle Eastern nations over and over and over again when it suited our interests, especially within the context of oil. This notion that they can't pursue nuclear power seems absurd to me. And again, this whole notion, or the reason that they want a nuclear missile in the first place, is to defend themselves from countries that have been attacking them relentlessly. Attacking or threatening relentlessly. I'll end this here because I don't want to continuously repeat myself. But we should pay attention to what is going on over there, because it only takes a provocation. We have been using this maximum pressure strategy, but I got to be honest, if you have that much force in the region and you're looking for pretexts to get further involved, one will happen. And Iran putting the world on notice for the 60-day thing is an interesting dilemma that the European nations are going to have to sort out. Is that going to be enough of a pretext for the U.S. to try to involve themselves into a conflict? Stay tuned. Stay tuned. Thank you, Trudy. I hope you, Trudy! Trudy, damn it, I don't have it in me. So, I met Worf. We went to GalaxyCon, my wife and I, and I'll cut this later. We went to GalaxyCon, and I got the opportunity to meet Worf. Between you and me, Worf is a bit of an asshole. Now, what do I mean by that? Because I know that's your guy, and I know you like him. But I paid money to get his autograph and to talk to him. Now, I asked Worf a question about cynicism in... God, I'm going to have to do another show on this. And I don't mean that literally as an asshole. It's just he was pretty detached when I was talking to him. And everything, he was like, yeah. He just cared about the picture. It's like, and it said, it was like, are we going to take a picture or what? And it's like, I paid you money to talk to you and to shake your hand. And you're just, glad handing me so you can move to the next person in line. I'm a person, buddy, and you should be able to talk to me even if it's a bullshit conversation. Now, I had the opportunity to talk to Q. I had the opportunity to talk to Dax. All of these other people were extremely pleasant. Q engaged me in a political conversation. He was like, who are you voting for? He was like, what do you do? So I'm a political commentator. Oh, yeah. So, what type of politics? I was like, I'm a left-winger. Are you telling your people to vote? I said, well, I think people should vote. Yeah, good. It's important. Like, he was really on this point of, and I was like, well, I think I don't believe in this vote blue no matter who stuff, but I do think people should vote. Well, it's really important in this election. We got to get that clown out of office. Like, he was very, very intense. So I love talking to Q. Data was awesome talking to. Like, he sat there and engaged in a conversation, talking about the guy. I always bring up this show what Star Trek did, where there was just this conversation about Data losing, and his sense of self was lost in it, so he took himself out. He goes into a conversation saying that the guy who he had that show with was the first Showtime gig that he's ever had in the industry, and that the guy would have shows and plays in his house. Like, Data goes into this long-winded conversation about it. Worf couldn't be bothered. Worf could not be bothered. Here you are. Come on. My wife was sneaking pictures. There's your guy, Trudy. He's smaller in person, right? This is him looking at me like, yep. Are we just going to take a picture, dude? Can we get the picture? DeLorean. That's the DeLorean. The movie, Back to the Future. My wife with the Thanos glove. It's me with the Thanos glove. Like, This was so surreal, man. I wish I was on acid at the time. I was not. Ghostbusters. I'm sorry, I'm Spaceballs. Spaceballs. This guy looks so much like John Candy. This is him, and this is me asking him a question. This is so cool. Extraordinarily cool. This is where it was held in Jackson Ward. Jackson Ward is a historic district in Richmond. Where is my... There we are. That's me. Jackson Ward. Seen this one. Here's Q. I gotta be honest, Q's signature was probably more important to me than anybody else's. He's one of my favorites. Oh, that's Odo. We didn't get Odo's signature. We just got Odo's thing. They look so different in person. Like it's so weird to see them in person. Here's Data, Brent Spiner. Isn't that cool? This is so cool. Yeah. GalaxyCon. Wolf ruined Star. Yeah, he killed Star Trek for me. Jamal, have you read PNAC documents from 2000? Baldwin was a member and recounted 2000 elections. Pikachu equals Joe Biden groping kids. Well, so I thought I had a video of that, but the video of it, he's like he's flipping out. It's the funniest thing in the world. I don't love him anymore because of the way he treated you. Aw, thank you, Trudy. Now, and don't get me wrong, he didn't treat me bad. It was just, I grew up watching Star Trek. Like, I grew up watching it. That one time my wife, when I first started doing the show, I went to one of the conventions, and one of the guys, somebody who saw me, who knew me, engaged me. And I talked to the person, but my wife was like, that guy recognized you. That guy, was a fan of yours. I said, okay. She was like, you got to engage him more. Like, that person, even though you don't consider yourself what they consider you, it behooves you to talk to that person, because that person is essentially somebody who's watching your show. He doesn't have to watch your show. And I think she's right. And after that, when I came across people, I would engage and talk to them, et cetera, et cetera. My point is, the same thing is true for Worf, and maybe even more so for Worf. Like, and I know I'm even calling him Worf, so forgive me, but that to some degree that even gets across how people perceive him and how people have perceived him over years. We're talking about like decades that people have been watching this show. So don't dislike him because of that, because like I said, he didn't treat me horribly. I just wanted to talk more. That's all. So don't not love him, Trudy, because of that. Don't not love him. Many of the actors in neoliberal Hollywood changes people. I don't know. Never meet your heroes unless they were Bill Hicks. I know, right? Somebody said that. I had a friend of mine who loved Michael Jordan. I was a fan of Jordan's, but idolized him. She used to play basketball, and she was like, yeah, I don't want to meet him. Like, I don't want to find out he's an asshole or something like that. No, Trudy. Don't, Trudy. I don't want to mess up your dream. Don't mess up your dream, man. If you get the opportunity and he's on your list, I would say take it. If he's on your list, take it. Alright, guys, I'll end this here. If you guys enjoy what I'm putting down, you find yourself coming back here often, please consider supporting this content through liking, sharing, and of course PayPal or Patreon. Also, Patron appreciation episode is going to be 6 p.m. this evening. Oh, by the way, also Ron Placone wants to come on the show, so I think he's either going to be on the show tomorrow or pretty soon after. So I'll see you guys in a few. I think so.